a chance to speak with you today. I commend you all, young and old alike, for coming here to Washington on this very important time. We're just a few weeks will be recognizing the 95th anniversary of the Armenian genocide, this most horrific act where millions of people lost their lives or were raped or murdered or tortured, forced out into the desert and left to die. All the horrific stories that we have heard. It is difficult for us to think of those events. It is difficult for us to reflect back on them, but that is what we must do. That is what we must come together. That is what we must spend our time on, commemorating those who lost their lives and those horrific events. We were reminded of, and I just had a teacher up here, reminded of the famous words of George Santayana, those who will forget history are condemned to repeat it. And hence we come together for occasions such as this so that So that we will remember history, so that what we will not repeat it. As the gentleman from New York referenced before, there of course are those who will deny this. They will deny other genocides as well. We have seen it just in recent history with Rwanda and Sudan. One of the frustrating things for me, of course, as we live through these things today, is that we have an international body, the UN, who cannot find it within its own ability to define a genocide when it is going on right literally under everyone's noses. This is why I, as a member of Congress, have oftentimes called for the defunding of the UN until they begin to get their act together and recognize what occurred both in history and occurring now, literally, as we speak as well. I recognize as well the role that, as you indicated before, that Congress has to play in all this, and that's why I have, ever since I came to Congress, been sponsors of the legislation to recognize this horrific act, also to call on this administration to do the right thing. Why is it so difficult for politicians from either stripes to do the right thing? And so that's why I'm pleased we have to come to the microphone here and be speaking in a bipartisan manner to call on this administration to do the right thing. You know, the gentleman from New York, who was up at the microphone, he made reference, and I was just coming in just as he was beginning to speak, he made reference to the flotilla. And I wasn't sure just which, and then I found out which flotilla he was talking about. But I was, initially when he used the word flotilla, I was thinking whether or not he was referring to those horrific events during the 1915, during the incidents with regarding the barges, when during the days of the war, the folks of the various embassies around the world were in Turkey, and that they could open up their windows and they could hear the people being rounded up by the Turkish forces and basically forced to the sea, to basically be pushed onto barges, and to hear the cries in the nights of the windows, and as the barges went off to the sea, later to come back several hours later with literally no one on them. Those people's voices forever silenced. I've had the opportunity just several years ago to speak with a survivor of this Holocaust. She was born in 1912, and she is a constituent, and she was able to relate the story, how she came from a prominent family and was, as many others, required to, or told to denounce the faith and denounce the nationality, and of course they refused to do so, and they, like many others, were rounded up as well, not pushed off to that flotilla, not pushed off to that barges, but literally, since she was only a little girl, put out on the donkeys and put out in the desert and carried out there and suffered all the things that was come about. She was befriended by some Turkish people, she indicated, and eventually was made her way to the United States. And she said, in 1980 I think it was, and she said that her cry is now she said, I simply call for justice and for the words that never again would truly become a reality. And so my commitment is that her words and her request, and for also all those people who were on those barges and others whose voices had been silenced, that her words will live true, that we shall never forget, and we will recognize this horrific day. Thank you, God.